The year was 1998. Michael Jordan would play his 800th consecutive NBA game, scoring double digits in a 100-98 overtime win over the New Jersey Nets. Dale Earnhardt snapped a 59 race losing streak in the 40th Daytona 500, his only Daytona win in his 20th start at the time. DMX's debut album, It's Dark and Hell is Hot, debuted at #1 on the Billboard 2000 charts and would be certified platinum no less than 4 times, easily making him one of the hottest rap debuts of all time and cementing him as an instant rap icon. Lauryn Hill would release her solo debut, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, and won the R&B Album of the Year award at the 1998 Billboard Music Awards, as well as 5 Grammys at the 41st Annual Grammy Awards out of 14 nominations, which at the time was a first for a female artist. One of the awards won was Album of the Year, the first time a hip-hop artist had ever won the category. San Francisco Giants player Barry Bonds became the first Major League Baseball player to hit 400 home runs and steal 400 bases in a single career, cementing his legend as a baseball icon. Elton John was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II, while rapper Eminem got signed to Aftermath Entertainment. D.L. Hughley would get his first ever TV series, The Hughleys, which would get canceled by ABC, but would join UPN Network for its 2nd season and go on to become a part of the legendary UPN Monday night lineup with Moesha, The Parkers, and Girlfriends. And in contrast, 2 of the whitest shows in history, Sex and the City and Dawson's Creek, made their TV premieres on HBO and the WB, respectively. The anime series Trigun would make its debut on TV Tokyo in Japan and would become so popular that word would spread to the United States and capture the hearts of a generation of anime fans in the years to follow.
But I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
The Bill Clinton-Monica Lewinsky scandal was living rent-free in every American's head and was part of wall-to-wall media coverage and pop culture references kicking off at the beginning of the year, leading to Bill Clinton's impeachment trial towards the fall, which would conclude by the end of the year. That said, the jokes kept on coming. Richard Pryor became the first recipient of the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor, where he was celebrated by comedy icons Robin Williams, Whoopi Goldberg, Damon Wayans, and Chris Rock, and a laundry list of celebrities across film, television, music, and sports. NFL quarterback Steve Young and legendary wide receiver Jerry Rice would score their 80th career touchdown in a 36-22 loss to the Green Bay Packers, beating the record held by Miami Dolphins' Dan Marino and Mark Clayton. And Wesley Snipes would introduce an entire generation to Marvel's Daywalker in the first Blade film, a superhero movie that many at the time didn't know was a superhero movie. It's also important for its cultural and historic impact for showcasing a black superhero in a major motion picture production, as well as saving Marvel from financial ruin at a time when the company was literally hanging off the edge of a financial cliff. And it would ultimately lead to Marvel discovering that people like superhero movies. Something else spectacular happened that year as well, and it was that Kurt Busiek and George Perez had introduced a new black superhero to the Avengers mythos. Debuting in 1998's Avengers Volume 3, Number 8, Delroy Garrett Jr., then known as Triathlon, now known as 3D Man, a hero who, as his name would imply, is a tale of 3 heroes. Something that we're going to be talking about over the course of this video, from his journey as Wayward Avenger Triathlon to his trouble time in the Initiative, and ultimately to his rebirth as the second 3D Man. And we're going to talk about all that right now.
More evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, the Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. So as I did in the previous video for Captain America Sam Wilson, as well as James Rhodey Rhodes, the War Machine, we're talking about legacy this year for Black History Month. And one thing you probably noticed by now is that pretty much all these characters that I'm going to be talking about are all characters who, while they existed as Black characters, they took over their mantles from their white counterparts. And Triathlon in this particular instance is no different. However, it's all gonna be in how it's handled. Actually, each of the heroes that we talk about, all of them came about their mantles incredibly differently than one another. And Delroy Garrett is no different. As a matter of fact, Delroy in his creation did the same thing. He took over the mantle of a white counterpart, but did it in a way that kept him his own character for a while. Technically, Delroy was always the 3D man. He just never truly realized it. While his name was Triathlon when he debuted in 1998, he wouldn't take up the name 3D Man until almost 10 years later in Avengers: The Initiative number 14 in 2008. The name didn't matter. He always had the power. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Who is the 3D Man? Delroy, a former track star, an Olympic athlete who won the gold multiple times at the Olympics, 3 to be precise, and despite his natural gift for athleticism, he was never expected to hang up his track shoes to be a superhero. But life comes at you fast, and while Delroy was able to score 3 gold medals for himself, it turned out he didn't win them clean. He wound up testing positive for steroids, and the Olympic Committee stripped him of his Olympic gold. This ultimately devastated him to the point he fell into a deep fit of depression, and the only thing that managed to raise his spirits was religion, though not the traditional kind. He'd throw in his lot with the triune understanding, effectively a cult that worshipped the Triforce power, though not necessarily in a way that was visible to the general public, much less the cult's worshippers. And it would be within the confines of the triune understanding where Delroy would unlock the power that turns him into Triathlon. The funny thing about this is that Triathlon, unlike many legacy characters, technically started out as the character he'd ultimately become. He just didn't know it. Initially, Triathlon thought his powers were a gift from God. Spoiler alert, they were not. They were the result of the Triune Understanding's founder, Jonathan Tremont, using one of the church's 3 triad fragments, this one having specifically belonged to the original 3D man, Hal Chandler, and his brother Charles. And this is what gave Delroy the power of the 3D man. Whether as Triathlon or 3D man, his powers always made him 3 times stronger, faster, and agile than an ordinary human. But as time progressed, this changed. He became not just 3 times stronger, faster, and more agile than an ordinary man, but even beyond a peak human athlete. As you'd imagine, being 3 times physically better than a peak human, he can lift precisely 1 ton with ease, run at a top speed of 105 miles per hour, and while many won't remember this, he also ran Diablo's pockets without him even noticing, and they'd only been on the same page for about roughly 4 panels before he did it. Diablo didn't realize he'd been hit until it was too late, and this would seem unimpressive by superhero standards, but the fact that Delroy was fast enough to only be a couple of feet away when he did it means he's not just long distance running fast, but just superhumanly fast in general. And if his sleight of hand skills aren't enough to make him an impressive superhero specimen, his overall reflexes are fast enough for him to dodge bullets and steal balls the size of a handball without breaking a sweat. What's more impressive is his ability to control his body so precisely, even while his feet are off the ground. While in a training exercise against She-Hulk, Delroy showed agility on levels so impressive, even Captain Marvel took stock of it, noticing he seemed to have just as much control over his body in mid-air as he did with his feet firmly planted on the ground. And his aim, while mid-air, was so accurate that he could swing his legs to strike a metal ball and send it flying into She-Hulk's forehead and bank shot it to the goal beside her, something even she had to admit was something she'd only ever seen someone like Hawkeye pull off, and Delroy did it while mid-air. But his powers don't actually stop there. He's superhumanly durable and can shrug off punishment that would kill peak humans in good health. And while he's superhumanly durable, as both his monikers would imply, he's limited to about 3 hours of continuous peak physical performance before his body becomes fatigued. Similarly, 3 of his senses, sight, hearing, and smell, are all enhanced to what is roughly 3 times the level of a peak human as well. And he has a healing factor that allows him to recover from injury or illness, you guessed it, 3 times faster than a peak human would. And while combat isn't necessarily a part of his power set, it's probably no surprise that he's a skilled fighter. He's incredibly skilled in hand-to-hand combat and likely got training during his time with the Avengers on how to improve his already impressive fighting skills. He's more than capable of throwing hands with his enemies, but he improved dramatically over the course of his time with the Avengers, being surrounded by characters like Captain America probably was more than enough to make him what I would say 3 times the fighter. Not to say that he's going to be taking down characters like Iron Fist or Shang-Chi, but anyone he gets into a fight with is going to know they've been in a fight. And while all that's impressive, his real bread and butter now is his Triforce vision. Originally, Delroy was of the belief that the original 3D man's glasses were what made him capable of increasing his vision to be able to detect scrolls, but it wasn't true. The original 3D man's glasses merely focused the power he already had. Think Cerebro for Professor X or the White Tiger's Tiger Medallion. It just enhances what is already there. Wearing the 3D glasses even allowed him to see through illusions and made him capable of perceiving the supernatural spirits possessing others. And while he no longer needs the glasses to wield the Triforce vision, he still wears something that's almost like a version of them, though I'm pretty sure these don't have the same effect as the original 3D man glasses because those were destroyed during the Avengers Initiative run during Secret Invasion. The glasses he wears now seem like they are really there more for style points than they are anything else and are kind of similar to the lenses that he used to wear before he officially took up the original 3D man's 3D glasses. Now, on a sidebar related to his Triforce vision is that the power of the Triforce grants the power of the warrior, the power of the athlete, and the power of the scholar as well. So while it's never actually ever been communicated in any outward way that the power of the Triforce makes Delroy 3 times smarter than the average person, or I guess what would be effectively a average super genius or regular genius, it's safe to say that that's probably closer to being true than it is not. Delroy is incredibly more intelligent than the average person, even without it being said, and if the tagline is anything to go by, it's more than possible that the Triforce actually did increase his intelligence. He's mentioned on more than a few occasions that he can see all the angles and how things will play out, literally seeing problems in 3 dimensions. Do with that information what you will. Delroy's induction into Marvel is a dubious one. And it's something that you'll hear me bring up at least a couple of times over the course of this Black History Month's special character breakdowns, because it's something that came up with the character Falcon before he became Captain America. His initial run with the Avengers was not good, was not handled well by any stretch of the imagination. Not at all. And one can make an argument that War Machine's time with the West Coast Avengers was not handled particularly well either. But I will say this, while I don't think that Delroy's induction into the Avengers was handled as terribly as the previous 2 characters, that's not saying a whole lot. Like I said earlier, this is when Kurt Busiek was writing the book, and man, I'm gonna be honest with you, that book was white. It was white. I'm talking mighty white. I'm talking Mayberry white. Woo, man, it took a while to get some color on that book. And I know some people might think that I'm over exaggerating. I promise you, I'm not over exaggerating. I'll just say this. It felt like a backhanded response to potential criticisms that the book was, I don't know if it was getting it back then, but I'm pretty sure that if there were, instances of the letters columns, I don't have access to all those, so I can't really go back and pour through them. If I did, I wouldn't be surprised if there were some black readers who might have had a problem with the fact that the book was, oh man, there's so many different variations of white, but yet at the same time, they all kind of look the same. But if I had to pick one out, this one was like bone white, Ku Klux Klan white, Beatles, the White Album white. I'll just go and put it like this. The roster for the team was Captain America, Iron Man, Scarlet Witch, Captain Marvel, who at the time was fluctuating between being Ms. Marvel and Warbird at the time. There was also former New Warriors, Firestar, and the artist formerly known as Marvel Boy, now and then known as Justice. There was also Thor, Hawkeye, and Vision. The one person that wasn't white was the robot. But no, it didn't stop there. So Avengers Volume 3, it ran from issue number 1 all the way to like issue 84 over the course of like 1998 to 2004. So about roughly 6 years. And over the course of that time, as you would imagine, a lot of faces kind of would rotate in and out, but this was also one of those rosters where like people were constantly rotating in and out for one reason or another. The team, I don't think, even really found its actual set roster that I mentioned until I think a few issues in, and it was literally right before Triathlon's debut. Over that time, you would see characters like Wonder Man, Quicksilver, She-Hulk, Giant Man, so on and so forth. Many of these characters would jump in and out of the book. And the few people of color that appeared in the book were either background characters or people who showed up for an issue or two and dipped. Characters like Black Panther, Monica Rambeau, and Silverclaw. Though Silverclaw probably got more usage than just about anybody else. So what did Marvel decide to do? They introduced Delroy as a new character, but he wouldn't join the team like right away. He would show up in issue 8 and he'd just kind of be there for a few issues, like 2, maybe 3 issues, to help the Avengers fight Moses Magnum, one of the Avengers' few like black solo villains, which is just wild to think about. Then he would later come back around issue 15 and then disappear until issues 26 and 27, where the Avengers decided to go back down a road they'd gone before with Sam Wilson during his time as Falcon. Box ticking time. Now, while the roster was already rotating members in left and right, as I mentioned earlier, with Carol Danvers battling alcoholism at the time, Wonder Man, Vision, Thor, and Captain America were all dealing with various other problems of their own, and Justice and Firestar's relationship was in shambles because they were too busy avengering to actually be a real couple, so they left too. So on issue 27, Triathlon joined an entirely rebuilt Avengers roster. Now, this was a unique roster because it was, I think, the first time ever that there were more women on the team than there were men. There were 4 women on the team, 3 men. Those men being Iron Man, Triathlon, and Giant Man, while She-Hulk, Wasp, Scarlet Witch, and Warbird were the women on the team. But when this happened, the same thing that happened to Sam Wilson back in the 70s was the same thing that happened to Triathlon. The Avengers tried to pretend that they were colorblind. The funny thing about this go-around versus the last time when Falcon, it was at least that the storytelling didn't feel tone deaf, at least until a reveal that comes up later that we'll talk about very briefly, but we'll have to get there. Avengers government liaison Dwayne Freeman was very vocal about wanting to bring diversity to the team and a leader who could help them navigate what was at the time a new age of media coverage in both the real world and Marvel's reflection of it. And while Dwayne lobbied to change things up, the Avengers themselves pushed back, largely because there were to be no more mutants on the team, which at the time meant no Scarlet Witch and no Quicksilver. Since they were still mutants at the time, the retcon that would come along many years later had not happened yet. This would have included Justice and Firestar too, if they weren't already leaving. But the problem, again, like last time, was the framing. Having Iron Man, the epitome of white privilege, proclaiming that the Avengers has always been diverse and proclaiming they've had blacks and Hispanics and gypsies, his words not mine, as well as, and let me check my notes here, mythological gods pretty much fucks up the whole argument for several reasons. And I'm going to run them down right now. Number one, the mythological god part just feels like a way to claim diversity that wasn't really there. Like the gods in question, Thor, a white god, Hercules, the white demigod son of a white god, the Eternals, who were technically gods, all the ones who served as Avengers were white, and actually back then, with the exception of one, they were all white. Kingo was the only one who wasn't white, and he was Asian. Same goes for the mutants. Every mutant up until then was one of the white mutants. Maybe they had blue skin and fur at some point, but it was faux diversity at best. For two, the blacks, Hispanics, and Romani who had served as Avengers all served as token members. They were almost always the only one on the team. And in a lot of cases, it was not just a situation where, oh, well, we have like a few white people, we have one black person, we have one Hispanic person, we have one Romani person. No, under normal circumstances, it was like, no. We have a bunch of white people and we have one person of color. It's almost like the I'm gonna get you sucker scene with Chris Rock.
One rib.
One rib.
I sure am hungry.
Make that one rib to go.
And that's what I feel like. I feel like that whole time, I just see Chris Rock cheese, and like everybody is sitting here staring at them with black disgust, and he's just sitting there grinning, talking about some, I sure is hungry. Like it just even at the time of this specific roster, as I said earlier, we're talking about characters ranging from Iron Man, Captain America, Scarlet Witch, Wonder Man, Justice, and Firestar, and Silverclaw. All white characters with the exception of Silverclaw.
Whoa, you were just about to call her Spanish. But we know Spanish is a language or somebody from Spain. And if she was from Spain, she'd be white. And I think she's from like Central America or some shit. So, you know what? I'll just do it for you. Silverclaw is una diosa latina, la única persona no blanca en el equipo en ese momento.
And then there's the whole no quotas thing. They claim that they don't admit members based on race, ethnicity, whatever. But later in the issue, we see the Avengers scrambling to call in every black, Hispanic, and Romani character they can find. We see that Falcon, Firebird, Mantis, Rage, Black Panther, Living Lightning, War Machine, Monica Rambeau, all either turned them down, were too busy, were underage, or retired. To a point that Wasp had to admit that the whole colorblind thing might have actually made it harder for them to recruit, likely because it's made many potential members not feel welcome. Because like, oh, well, you're not gonna call me. Like a lot of these characters seem shocked they were being asked to be Avengers because they know better. They know like, no, this shit's gonna be white as fuck. We're not getting in here. It makes the whole colorblind mantra thing ring even more hollow when you just see how they weren't able to get anybody. Hell, even Falcon points out that the last time didn't go particularly well and he didn't want any part of it. But before I carry on with any more of this information, I need a huge favor. I can't continue this video without you hitting that subscribe button. Like if you're still here by this point, you've been enjoying the video on some level. So please hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell so you can get more videos just like these. And also just for the measly cost of one like, I know it's expensive. It's a little rich for a lot of people's blood, but for one like, I'll give you the rest of the video. I tell you what, here, look, I'll show you how it's done. Look.
It's more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
See, look at that. It's easy. You just click on that. You click on the thing right there, boom, done. Okay, so that's that. So I'll wait for you to do that. Okay, all right. So now let's carry on with the rest of the video. So now that I've said all this, you're probably wondering, what about Triathlon? Well, the same problem persisted, as you probably would imagine. Triathlon, he joined the team, but now he was the only person of color on the team, but it had less to do with his color this time and more to do with his religion. Iron Man knew that the Triune Understanding was bad news, and they were, and he knew that Dwayne Freeman, their government liaison, was in with them, so Dwayne proclaimed that they needed diversity, That was all a manipulation from the leader, Jonathan Tremont, to get Triathlon on the team, all in an effort to find more triad fragments and take them for himself, including Triathlon's piece. So the whole diversity angle was an evil subplot. So not only does it cheapen the somewhat goodwill of this less tone-deaf effort to try and include some diversity on the team this time around, it now just makes the whole thing feel forced. And it's hard to tell what Kurt was trying to get across. Having read the whole thing, I can tell you a little bit more easily what he was trying to get across. I mean, I'll just put it like this. I think Kurt's a great writer. Legend in the business. A great writer has written many of my favorite stories and across multiple comics, multiple imprints, publishers, so on and so forth. And I love the Kang Dynasty story arc of this Avengers run. I actually think it's one of the most iconic Avengers story arcs of all time. And so iconic, in fact, that Marvel was actually willing to make a movie with the Kang Dynasty subtitle. That's just how iconic that stuff was. This is how big it was. So it was just such a crazy and wild story that, just was what it was. He was the guy who even was responsible for the original Power Company at DC, which was a multicultural team that had a black man, not necessarily leading in the field, but a black man leading the company, like being the one like in charge of everything. Also at the same time, having a brown woman as what was effectively the face of the team. So, and he did a really good job there. So I don't know what happened then. I mean, clearly he knew how to write black characters in. I don't know what was going on here. And I will definitely say this is actually a unique situation. Unlike Falcon and War Machine, I feel like Triathlon was actually written well enough that he didn't come off as a stereotype. He wasn't like saying, hey, cool breeze, and oh, you jive tuckies. And of course, this is the 90s. They didn't try and make him speak hippity hop either. They didn't try and saddle him with ebonics to, see darkies? Don't you see? He talks just like y'all. Like they weren't doing that. So, I mean, it was definitely a breath of fresh air there. And there was also the notion that when they were doing the story arc, it became pretty clear that Triathlon, he didn't feel unwelcome per se. He just didn't feel like he had a place. And not because like the people were being mean to him, like when Falcon was on the team, or ignoring him. He's actually talking to Jarvis. He's talking about how he hasn't made any real connections on the team. I felt like this time around it was just handled a bit better. Because even Jarvis says, hey, it's a two-way street. Maybe you should reach out to them and, see what happens, which I don't think, should have been the message that, oh, maybe you should, try and, make friends instead of waiting for them to make friends with you. I did at least appreciate that when Triathlon voiced his concerns, when Delroy was like, hey, this is, what's going on. I don't know if I'm cut out for this team. I want to be here. I want to save the world, but I feel like, I don't think anyone likes me or whatever, any of that stuff. I actually appreciated the fact that there was some good commentary, at least in the sense that his white counterparts did try to make him feel at home once they realized there was a problem. Even if, they didn't try before, Iron Man eventually got his act together, albeit while still harboring some ill will towards, the try and understanding, and for good reason. He kind of dropped his suspicions a bit of Triathlon at that time. And while Captain Marvel, once again, at the time operating as Warbird, wasn't against his joining, she was the first one to actually take stock of Delroy's disenfranchisement and actively tried to make things more comfortable for him on the team and help him feel like he was seen and heard. And beyond Carol Danvers, the only other people he really seemed to get along with were She-Hulk, who left the team shortly after he joined. She even had cute nicknames for him like Try Guy and Triple Snacks, while he often referred to her as Big Green. They were always ribbing each other whenever you saw them on panels together. There was never any animosity. It was always just yucks and, shiggles. And others like Monica Rambeau, Wasp, Jack of Hearts were also pretty cozy with him too. So those were good things to see. But at the end of the day, I just feel like when it comes to trying to tell a story about diversity and how to do it right or how to do it wrong, I feel like the message got lost, which is why I often say maybe you shouldn't have white writers try to do this stuff. Like maybe get a writer who actually knows what it's like to be the only one in the room. Even when it's not as a full-time writer, maybe even just as a guest writer or consulting writer. I feel like maybe we should be normalizing that, because even today, I still see some white writers who mess up every now and again. Like, looking at you, NYX. Anyway, kind of getting back to his time on the Avengers, beyond this point, he spent a more significant part of his time in Marvel as a member of the 50 State Initiative, following the fallout with his former Triune Understanding leader, Jonathan Tremont. He ended up joining the 50 State Initiative during Civil War, which is when he dropped the Triathlon moniker and began calling himself 3D Man, and would later end up joining the Agents of Atlas. But his biggest claim to fame was that he was instrumental in taking down the Skrulls during Secret Invasion. His power to see Skrulls for who they really were helped him and the Skrull kill crew take down a huge swath of Skrull infiltrators. As a matter of fact, Delroy being there, he literally was the cavalry during Secret Invasion. He was literally the MVP in a lot of regards. However, it led to one of his darkest moments because he effectively committed a war crime. When Earth's mightiest heroes fought the Skrull invasion, he killed an innocent Skrull named Zereg, who infiltrated Earth under the guise of Crusader. Now, Crusader wasn't a bad guy. He actually liked Earth and admired its people and its heroes, despite being fully indoctrinated into the Secret Invasion operation. But when he got to Earth, he gave it all up and tried to do what was right. Well, 3D Man killed him. Granted, he didn't actually know Crusader was on the up and up, so it wasn't like he didn't care. But he had a very callous attitude about it, even after he learned the truth. He seemed almost radicalized by the Secret Invasion, to the point that the only good Skrull to him was a dead one. His other more recent claims to fame is being a character who finally got some justice after years of misuse and inconsistent storytelling, as well as, I think, the fastest we fucked up you will ever see from comics readers ever. I did a video last year talking about Jed MacKay's Avengers number 12 and 13, and in that particular story arc, the 3D Man had made his return. And I just want to set this up a little bit. 3D Man had not been used very often in and around this time frame. 3D Man was not a character who was seeing a lot of panel time, and even in the books that he was in, like, he was there literally just in the background chilling, not doing or saying anything. The most he got used was in the Agents of Atlas series, and really even after that run, he just kind of faded into obscurity. And it kind of seemed like after he got drummed out of the initiative following Secret Invasion, technically, he was exonerated of wrongdoing, but he was still, like, basically kind of put out to pasture, more or less, at least from the initiative's perspective. He went on to join the Agents of Atlas, and he seemed to be happier than he'd ever been. He didn't seem to be harboring all that anger and ill will or anything like what you see when you pick up Avengers number 12. And I'll admit, I thought everyone was well within their rights to be a little bit sketch on the whole 3D Man thing when Jed MacKay reintroduced him. But I think the problem was people took it a little bit too far. I saw so many people online that were freaking out about how dare they have a black man working for Orcus, a group that wants to ethnically cleanse mutants off the face of the planet. That's just not a good look for a black character. Yada 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 whoop-de-woo. And I think it actually made it even worse that 3D Man was depicted as being all in on wanting to destroy all mutants. And while sometimes in situations like these, you usually gotta wait 2, 3, 4, 5 months or whatever to see a story arc play out in full, this was one of those where it was a back-to-back storyline. So in less than a month, we got the answer to everyone's questions and eyebrow raises about 3D Man. It turned out that 3D Man wasn't actually working for Orcus. He was a sleeper agent. Now, granted, he was a sleeper agent that had volunteered for the operation, and Black Panther had set up a secret code word to release him from his sleeper agent, programming, his whole Manchurian candidate-isms, if you will. And it was there that we learned that the 3D Man, he wasn't, he worked for Orcus. He was doing their bidding and trying to help destroy mutants, but he was actually there to help systematically take down the Sentinel program from the inside. And it turns out that he didn't have any the anger and bitterness towards the Avengers as it seemed, because that was something I even thought was weird in Avengers number 12. He was going on railing off about the Avengers as if he still had a chip on his shoulder about them, which is weird considering that he seemed to have gotten over all that in the Agents of Atlas series that almost immediately followed Secret Invasion. So the fact that he was still sore about it, it felt a little weird. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna let him cook. And everyone else sadly did not do that. And then I saw so many people coming back later after that issue came out, basically kissing Jed MacKay's ring and being like, oh man, oh, I can't believe, oh, I thought you had him out here acting a whole monkey and da 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 da. No, that wasn't the case at all. And I love to see that sort of thing. I love to see people walking back statements when they realize that they were loud and wrong at the same time. I've had to do it, more than my fair share of times, I'm certain. And hey, sometimes you just got to take that L. It was also a really cool moment too, because, it got to remind us that 3D Man was still out here. Now that we're getting to this point in the video, I kind of want to touch on some things that I find really interesting about 3D Man that I was kind of wanting to say for last as we're getting relatively close to wrapping this up. First and foremost is that one of the interesting things about 3D Man is his costume. Delroy's original costume was red, black, and green, an obvious nod to African culture and the colors of the Pan-African flag, first introduced by Marcus Garvey in 1920. And adding in the gold doesn't change the meaning, because red, black, and gold is found in many African flags on some level or another. Among them, the former flag of Rwanda, as well as Ghana, Guinea-Bissau, and Sao Tome Principe. Even in his current costume, more indicative of the original 3D Man, it still keeps the same theme while honoring the original character, now focused on red and green, as well as gold, the flags of Benin, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, the Republic of the Congo, Guinea, Mali, Togo, and Senegal. Now, another interesting tidbit about the 3D Man is his legacy. Originally one of two brothers, himself and Charles Chandler, who seemingly died from being disintegrated by a radiation blast, but due to the blast imprinting Charles's image onto Hal's glasses, it placed him within the 3D realm, and Hal was able to bring his brother back to life by merging with him via Hal's now 3D glasses. This was originally believed to be what allowed them to become the 3D Man, but during Kurt Busiek's Avengers run during the Kang Dynasty arc, we learned of Delroy's mentor, Jonathan Tremont, and Delroy's backstory overall, and how the Tri-Power was usurped from Hal Chandler by Jonathan Tremont and then handed over to Delroy. But where Charles and Hal were two brothers, Jonathan Tremont was one of three. And add in Delroy, it works backwards to a perfect 3-2-1 countdown. 3 brothers, 2 brothers, 1 brother. Yeah, you see what I did there? Yeah, okay, yeah, I know.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Boo me. I've seen what makes you cheer. Anyway, if you take it another direction, it actually kind of works in a way where it's 3 circling back around itself multiple times. And what I mean by that is the creation of the Triforce occurred when 3 gods became one. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But the universe forged a Triforce power to combat the results of that triple union. And that led to Jonathan Tremont and his 2 brothers becoming entangled in the weave of the Triforce, resulting in his brother's deaths and Jonathan's ascension. And then comes Hal and Charles. Charles was the brother who Quotey Fingers died in the equation, but then I hear you say, wait, that's 2 people, not 3. Well, as it turns out, there was a third, only it wasn't a brother. It was a girlfriend. Hal and Charles had a third, and it was a woman by the name of Peggy Chandler, who originally dated Charles, but ended up marrying Hal after Charles's apparent death. They even had kids together. The 3 were thick as thieves back in the day, and thus a tri-union. Then you get to Delroy. Delroy is still the lone wolf, though. He doesn't have any siblings that we're aware of, but his power was derived from two brothers unrelated to him who either died or disappeared. But by the end of his journey as an Avenger, he became one with both Hal and Charles's life forces via the Triforce, and he was even able to bring them both back, even Charles, who was effectively dead at the time, or at least thought to be dead, but his essence was in the Triforce. So Delroy was able to bring him back when he released them from their union and brought him back to the land of the living from the 3D realm, thus making Delroy, Charles, and Hal the new 3-in-1, but also at the same time reuniting Hal, Charles, and Peggy, the former 3-in-1. And effectively, this closed the loop. Now, the last thing, I actually want to save this for last because I thought this was actually quite hilarious for a lot of reasons, but you've heard me throughout the course of this video. I'm constantly talking about the Triforce power, and I know many of you have been sitting here thinking like, wait. Does this make Legend of Zelda part of the Marvel Comics universe? Does this make the Triforce of Legend of Zelda part of the MCU now on some weird level? No. Two completely different Triforces, though they share a lot in common. Once again, different, but the energy is still the same. And to a point, when the Triforce power is depicted in Avengers Volume 3, number 50, it looks just like the Triforce of the Legend of Zelda series, only the upside-down triangles are spread a bit further apart to make them more legally distinct so they don't get sued. And the origin, while I'm not going to profess to know every single iteration of Legend of Zelda and its backstory, but even to a lesser extent, the origins weren't that terribly far apart either. Whereas in the Legend of Zelda series, the Triforce is effectively the goddesses of power distilled down into like a single form, they couldn't really go that direction with it in the Marvel Comics version of it. What they did is that there were three gods, back in the time before time immemorial, and these three gods formed the Trion, and in doing so, they poured all of their essence, all of their evil and greed and every dark thought, they poured it into a single sphere that was going to contain all of that in one space and allow them to do all that is good unabated by evil thoughts. Unfortunately, they missed a piece, and that piece got away. And when that piece started careening throughout the universe, getting closer and closer to Earth, the universe responded and created the Triforce fragments, and the rest is history. So yeah, it's kind of one of those deals where they couldn't do the exact same thing, because I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, Nintendo is a legendarily litigious company. Like, I don't even know if we can even show any Legends of Zelda footage in any of this video, because I'm almost positive they'll come after me for it. I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll chalk it all up in the editing bay.
Hyrule has been laid to ruin. My power is weakening, and Calamity Ganon will soon destroy Hyrule. I need your help.
Well, princess.
But yeah, it's wild. It's insane to me, actually, that Marvel got away with it. And it may actually be why 3D Man doesn't get used very often. Maybe, I don't know. But even when you get down to it, when you get the breakdown of what each of the fragments is meant to represent, the warrior, the athlete, the scholar, it's not exactly the same thing as, the video game version, but it's not terribly far from it. Like, when you look at the Triforces, you have the Triforce of Power, the Triforce of Courage, the Triforce of Wisdom. You could easily say that the Triforce of Power, you can make a case for it either being the warrior or the athlete, though I think it's actually better to say that it's the athlete. And if you look at the Triforce of Courage as that of the warrior, you see how it kind of lines up a little bit better there. And then when you talk about Wisdom, well, the Triforce of Wisdom, that is the scholar, as representative of the scholar. So yeah, it's like, man, I actually wish I could sit down with Kurt and ask him, like, man, what were you thinking? Like, what was going on at the time? You were really deep off in Ocarina of Time. I'm here for it. I'm here for it, though. Or were you playing Majora's Mask? Was Majora's Mask out at the time? I think Majora's Mask was out. Here, let's see. Let's look it up.
Later. One eternity later.
It actually came out towards the end of 1998. So that was plenty of time for Kurt to have played Ocarina of Time. And Majora's Mask came out 2 years later. And the issue where all this is explained, none of this came out until 2002. So yeah, you cannot convince me that Kurt Busiek was not playing Legend of Zelda on the Slick and then just decided to put this all in the character. I'm here. That's the canon now. That is the canon now. There is no, that's the canon. Done. But anyway, yeah, I like this character. I remember when I initially saw him, I kind of rolled my eyes back in 98 when Triathlon first hit the scene. And because I was like, oh, okay, I see what we're doing here. Yep, we got the black superhero. And what is his superpower? He's really athletic. Man, he can really play some basketball. Man, that guy is really good on the court. Man, have you seen this guy's 40-yard dash? Oh my God. Like it seemed almost like it was a stereotype just in and on its face. But I am glad to say that going back later and taking a peek at the book and really digging into the character, I found there was a lot to like about him. I think his origin as a steroid using Olympic athlete was very indicative of some of the stuff that was going on at the time. I know there were some cases that came up of like doping in the Olympics, like in and around like the 90s, mostly probably more the 80s than the 90s. But yeah, I thought the character was great. And once again, as I said before, in regards to how this character was inducted into the Avengers, yes, it was weird. It was kind of ham-fisted. I think that Kurt did a way better job of it than the Avengers team back when they tried to do this with Falcon. But yeah, it still kind of had those problematic elements, but not for the same reasons. And I think that it's a damn shame that Delroy is not caught on as a character. I feel like he should be a character that hangs around more. I mean, yeah, his whole thing is that it's a little gimmicky, it's a little goofy. In the words of Grace Randolph,
it's a little 70s, a little 60s. It's a little black power, a little political in my opinion.
3D glasses aren't really a thing anymore. And I think that Marvel kind of missed the wave on that one when 3D glasses became a thing again. I do appreciate that Jed MacKay was able to bring his character back, put him back in the limelight and remind people that he exists. I hope we see more of him. And I think it's sad that he hasn't gotten more opportunities to stand out on his own. I actually think that if handled correctly, he should. And I don't know if Jed's going to do this, but it seems like the Avengers has a little bit of a rotating roster right now, with Thor having stepped out in the wake of Storm joining the team so that he can go deal with his Immortal Thor stuff. I wonder if at this time, maybe we will at some point see 3D Man ever join the Avengers. If anybody would do it, it would be Jed MacKay, because Jed loves his deep cuts. He loves his deep cuts. Guy loves that man has not met a deep cut he does not like or enjoy. And that's not a diss. It's just an observation. It's just an observation. But yeah, I like this character a lot. I hope you guys like him too. And I don't know, I guess with this video being out, and I honestly don't know when this is going to come out. I have a feeling that this is going to be after War Machine, but who knows? It may come last. We'll see. We'll see where it falls. But that said, I've been enjoying doing these. I hope you guys have been enjoying them. I really appreciate everybody showing up for the Sam Wilson Captain America video. And once again, I still say, if you haven't checked out the video, go check it out, man, because a lot of good stuff there. A lot of good stuff. And we put a lot of work into these. So, but yeah, thank you all so much for, taking the time to sit down and watch this, hearing me wax on about 3D Man, a character. I don't know. You guys let me know. Did y'all know who 3D Man was before this video? Like, did any of y'all know that Triathlon was a thing before this? Like, let me know. Actually, that's what that's what you guys do for me. You subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, hit the like button. Also, hook a brother up with a share too. Shares really help out. But also, tell me if you knew. Did you know? Did you know who 3D Man was? Did you know? Because anyway, I'll see you all next time. We out of here. Peace.